That's my baby girl right there. Ooh, she with her friends. I'm a dog, I ain't shit. I'ma wind up hitting her friends. Bad guy, outlaw. Ooh, I'm like Pac, but I ain't die after the second time I got shot.
What's good? This is your boy Tico Tren, aka the Internal Sadist. What's good? What's good? What's good? My niggas. Basically this video is going to be about defeatist or being a defeatist and stuff along the lines of that, because typically we'll run into a lot of people in the manosphere and in and outside of the manosphere who typically suffer from this and or have this defeatist mentality or have this defeatist attitude towards the world and life and things along the lines of that. So, what's up, Chronic Blast? What's up, no sweetheart? So, we're making this video to basically, address this and talk about this and expound upon it and probably dive into it psychologically and things along the lines of that. So, we're going to dive into the defeatist today. I know this might be not be a lot of people's cup of tea, but at the end of the day, like I said, I don't make videos because you want them. I make videos because you need them. So it's one of those things where it's like this video is basically geared towards somebody that you're probably going to run into your life, or you might be going through this your damn self, and you might not want to admit it, and you might have a defeatist attitude, and you might be in denial about it for all intents and purposes. So typically, that's what this video is going to be about or geared towards. Helping people who are dealing with people that are defeatist, or helping people who are actually in the midst of being defeatist. The topics I'm going to cover today on this are going to be the 3 paths chosen by defeatist, emotionally brokenness, hopelessness, defeatist mentality, how to overcome it, and my final thoughts. So that's what this video is going to be about. I'm going to start off with the beginning and the paths that defeatists normally take when they actually go down a defeatist route. I'm going to go with the paths that they normally take. The sad part about that is what a lot of people don't realize or understand about defeatists is they always usually fall into one or two paths. They either end up being very self-harming or self-deletion. They'll end up being in like a constant state of self-loathing or or narrow-mindedness, or a constant state of like almost like a depression or a manic or depressive a depression state, basically. Whereas like they just come at you emotionally all the time, thinking that they're coming at you with knowledge when they're just coming at you with straight emotions. Then you have the other one where, they go off the deep end and they end up like, harming others or harming the public. Those are typically the three paths that they normally take. So the 3 paths are harming themselves, harming others, or being in a constant state of an emotional low. We'll refer to that, or depression, or just an emotional low or emotional rut. That's typically the paths that they normally take, because at the end of the day, when they take these paths, they don't see themselves as needing to improve. They see everybody around them as needing to improve or be better human beings around them for all intents and purposes. So technically, when this stuff happens, you see a group of people who believe that they shouldn't have to change, but everybody in the world should have to change around them. And that's typically the mindset that they typically have when they're defeatist, when they're that far defeated, or when they have like a very negative outlook on themselves, or on the world, or on anything ever changing or becoming better, is a better way to put it. So typically when they get into this rut, you'll start seeing things like the people who sit outside female gyms and will start offing women as they walk outside gyms is typically the type of people who fall into this category. Or you'll see the person that has a suicide note, and the cops end up shooting them with a fake gun or something like that, or while he's acting like he's pulling a gun, and they end up being shot to death by the police officers. And later, the cops find a suicide note on them, or they'll do it themselves and they'll self-delete themselves. Um, so that's typically what happens with those guys, and it's sad when it gets that far, when a man wants to self-delete, or and it's just sad in general when a man wants to choose the route of deletion. I mean, to choose the route of just offing people in general, or just trying to get, or just trying to understand, like, just choose the route of, like, not really understanding what they're going through, or understanding the ramifications and or justifications why they're doing it. I mean, they have a justification for why they do it, yes. However, it's not the proper justification for, wanting to off a bunch of people or wanting to off yourself. The sad part about that is there's always room for improvement, and nobody's perfect. So therefore, even the perfect people have to improve upon themselves. It's typically how it works. And the sad part about that is you run into these various problems when you run into people who always believe that all these people got it made, and everything is perfect. Everything always looks perfect from the outside. The sad part about that is when you're walking a mile in that person's shoes, you realize very quickly that that person doesn't have it all together, and that person isn't wrapped too tight, despite the fact that they're beautiful and or rich or anything along the lines of that. You find out very quickly that these people are suffering from similar but different circumstances based on their economic circumstances, or based on their position in life, for all intents and purposes. So you get a lot of people who typically think that you know uh, there's no point, so we might as well just choose this route, or we might as well just be this, or we might as well, like, just you know do stuff like this, and or stay in a constant rut, or stay in a constant emotional rut where they don't want to improve themselves, and it's like they're stagnant in their growth or in their betterment, and it's like they sit there and regress. It kind of sort of reminds me, if you've ever been in a nursing home, or worked in a hospital, or worked in a hospital setting, or been in a situation where, because you're off your feet so long, your muscles start to get either some type of dystrophy, or they start, like, they start getting very weak, to the point, because there's no circulation in your legs, there's no movement in your legs, so your muscles start, you know devolving, or undeveloping, or start, stop they start basically going in reverse, basically, and undoing themselves and stuff like that. So typically you'll run into a lot of people who either end up with blood clots, or you know legs and ankles are so weak that they can't actually walk after being on bed rest. This is typically why if you walk into a hospital, you'll see the what they call them, I call them space boots, or the circulatory boots, basically, they put on their legs all the way up to their to mid calf, basically, so it can actually circulate, so the muscle won't be lost while they're bedridden, for all intents and purposes. It's typically how that works. So, like, it constantly pumps up and massages the muscles and keeps everything circulating in the body, so you won't get any clots, or you won't get any atrophy in your muscles, basically, or they won't start start going the wrong way in development, for all intents and purposes. So that's typically how I see a lot of these people when they want to stay stagnant, and in a constant situation that they're in, and not want to change, or not want to improve upon themselves, or make themselves a better version of themselves. It's sad, but it typically happens to people. It happens to everybody. It can happen to anybody and everybody. It can happen to anybody for any reason, for any given thing. A good example of that is there's a lot of people in the manosphere, if their mom passes away, they're crippled by it. If their cat or dog passes away, they're crippled by it. If their dog or cat ends up missing, they're crippled by it. If they lose their job, they're crippled by it. If they, matter of fact, a lot of the men in the manosphere can attest to this. When they've actually went through divorce, they're literally crippled by it and caught off guard by it. Um, just stuff along the lines of that. So every man has actually been stagnant in their life for a certain period of time in their life due to some type of trauma from the outside being placed upon you, let it be emotionally, physically, mentally, and all the above. Typically, everybody goes through it or has went through it and has been like immobilized by the feeling or the emotions that overtake you for all intents and purposes. Um, that's typically how it works. Um, the sad part about that is you can always come out of that and you can always better yourself, but you got to have that person and that support system around you, and or you got to be somewhat strong-willed and or be willing to help yourself come up out of the situation that you're in for all intents and purposes. Um, on top of that, a lot of these people, like I said, are emotionally. There's a shit ton of just people being emotionally broken by the situation that was placed on them, or the various things that go around them that goes into why they're a defeatist, or why they're just have this defeated attitude or defeated look on them, or defeated mentality. So a lot of stuff actually goes into it. Let it be emotions, let it be life choices or life situations, or a friend, a significant other, a family member. They can all pretty much make you emotionally broken, depending on how emotionally especially depending on how emotionally tied you were to that person, or how much of an emotional bond you had to that person. That could typically make it so that you're actually hurting very badly, or you're hurting to the point where there's no coming back, or there's no you have no drive to come out of the rut or do better with yourself for all intents and purposes, and or improve upon yourself. So it's one of those things. What's up, Elder Monk? So it's one of those things where you either have to find an activity that makes you somewhat happy, or B, find a support system, or start getting out and do things that can possibly reverse this whole entire state of mind that you're in for all intents and purposes. Let it be a hobby, let it be a dog, a cat, a ferret, a pet, anything. Let it be taking up classes on various things. Let it be painting, let it be yoga, let it be martial arts, let it be dance class, let it be any of that stuff, so you can feel better about yourself. Because the sad part about that, if you have a defeatist attitude, typically you have a very low opinion of yourself, and you have a very low self-esteem within yourself. That's typically how it works. Because for you to actually believe that you can't do any better, or you can't be anything better, or you can't be anything, you would literally have to have like a very low opinion of yourself, or a very low self-esteem, or just low self-worth of yourself, or you just have a very low self-evaluation of yourself for all intents and purposes when it comes down to it. So typically a lot of people get caught up in this, and they wonder why, or they're trying to figure out why they feel the way they do, and why they can't come out of it, or why they typically try to make it so that can they can or can't come out of the situation. Like, there are some, when you talk to them, there are glimpses of hope in their mind, and there's glimpses of hope in them, but it's like they're so far gone they can't grasp the life preserver ring, basically, to pull themselves out, or they can't reach for the handle, so they can hold on tight, so they can actually make it out of the situation. It's typically how it ends up working, which is sad. And there's a lot of men and women that go through this at the same time. Another thing that you'll find with that is the hopelessness that they'll experience, or the sense of hopelessness that they can't make it, and there's no point, and it's over, and what's the point of life, or what's the point of letting all these people be happy when I can just self delete, or delete people for no reason, because I feel a certain way about myself. So this person got to go, and these people got to suffer for me feeling bad about myself. It's sad, but it's true. Like, a lot of people literally get caught up in this, and they start feeling a certain way about it, and they don't know why, and it hurts very badly. So they take it out on other people, or it hurts very badly and they take it out on themselves, or it hurts very badly and they're too scared to take it out on themselves. So they kind of sort of go about it in a roundabout way and employing somebody else to do it for them. Let it be the cops, let it be a bystander or somebody else. Basically, they end up employing somebody else to do it for them if they don't have the courage to do it themselves. It's very sad how it happens, and a lot of people actually suffer through this. And it grapples you, and like it grapples you emotionally, mentally, and physically, and it makes you feel as though you're nothing and you're less than, and you would never be anything, and you would never be about anything, and you can never grow or be the best version of yourself, and you always wallow in this self pity or this self. It's like a self pity party for all intents and purposes. It's like you don't want to do it, and you basically express yourselves either negatively or emotionally while you're doing it. I've noticed as well. Another thing, another thing is the mentality is so strong that it's almost like they're under the influence, basically. Typically is how it works when you have this defeatist mentality or defeated mentality. You basically, it's basically almost like you have some altered thing going on with you, like you took in drugs or you taking medication, or you've just been mentally altered to do so for all intents and purposes, or you're being manipulated into believing this. Basically, it's typically how it works. A lot of times, that's actually the true statement where a lot of them are manipulated into believing this about themselves. Is typically how it works. Is you meet a group of people, they break you down emotionally, mentally, and physically, and you try to go back to other people to get help because they're talking about you or stuff along the lines of that. Do you go back over and listen to these people because you have a lower self-esteem in the first damn place? Typically, people who fall for this typically all have low self-esteems or very low opinions of themselves, or very low have a very low self-worth of themselves, or self they value yourself very low. So they typically believe anything everybody's got to say. And if somebody's talking about them, they typically fall into that trap very quickly, to the point where it's almost like they can't break free, or it hurts, or they're just trapped and frozen. Almost like, they say the deer in headlights type thing. It's typically what I'm talking about when I'm referring to this lovely thing. And the sad part about that is when you're trapped like that, you got to have some type of thing to snap yourself out of it, or whip you out of it, or a friend, or a dog or something like that that can whip you out of that feeling for that period of time, so you can actually make it make adjustments to actually overcoming this grief or this feeling that you have about yourself or other people, or this belief that you're nothing and you would never be nothing about yourself, or this whole entire thought process that you would never amount to anything, or anything defeatist that won't help you progress as a human being, or a person in general, and be a productive citizen of society, that could quite possibly make you a not so productive citizen in society, and make you like end up in jail or dead, or being very destructive, and being very destructive emotionally to other people, because typically people's emotions have a ripple effect on other people, and a lot of people actually know this, so they typically pick on the weakest men in the whole entire world, so they can get them to come to their side, because that's all they can do is pick on the weakest men to make them sound like they're actually very smart, when in fact you're not very smart. You just picked off the weakest person in the whole entire crowd. You basically is basically no different than the weakest link, basically. And if they're the weakest link, then they're easy to pretty much manipulate into doing stupid shit, or getting to believe a certain thing about themselves that they really don't necessarily believe wholeheartedly, but because as you beat them down, as they get beat down by these people emotionally, mentally, and physically, and get picked apart by these people verbally, they typically start believing everything that these people say. So now they believe this, and they have this mindset, and they're defeatists, and they tell you that you're coping, when in fact they're actually coping with actually not acting on or improving themselves. So instead of actually improving yourself, you're actually coping with the ability that you don't want to improve yourselves, or you're procrastinating, or you're putting it off, or making excuses on why it's not feasible or reasonable to improve yourself. It's typically how it works. That's typically how this whole entire mindset works. You pretty much psych yourself out of believing that you can overcome it, and or be a better human being, when in fact you can. It's sad, but it's so true. Like a lot of people get caught up in this emotions and don't realize that they can actually change their own. They can actually change their they can change their life and change their perception for the better. The sad part about that, when you're in this mode, you're actually changing your life and changing your perception for the worse. It's typically how it works, and everybody sees it. And the sad part about that, nobody wants to hang around you or nobody wants to be around you unless it's a bunch of like-minded people like you. It's typically how it works. It's sad, but it is what it is. And people don't seem to understand or get that when they're actually put in these situations and not quite understanding the reasoning or the rhyme or reason behind why they're being that way or why they're acting a certain way in general. It's sad. It's really sad, but there's not very much you can do at the end of the day when it comes down to it. So it ends up being one of those things where it's like, well, how can I go about it? Or how can I change it? Or how can I do any of this stuff? How can I make it better? Um, am I choosing the right path? I've always said the best way to know if you're choosing the right path in your life is how much fulfillment you're getting out of it, or how much joy and excitement you're getting out of your life, or how good you feel about yourself when you accomplish things, or you know, figure out something, or solve a problem, or do something for yourself, or treat yourself, or how you feel. The immediate is basically like if you were to buy somebody a gift for all intents and purposes. You were to buy somebody a gift and they were having a bad day or they weren't really expecting the gift, and you buy them the gift and all of a sudden it boosts their day, it boosts their morality, and it boosts their how they feel and their self-worth about how they feel about themselves in that day for all intents and purposes. It'd be like if your mom was depressed and you bought her flowers, or if you're dating somebody or you're talking to somebody or a friend or a girlfriend or somebody like that, and you typically just buy them flowers and they feel better about their day. Like they probably were defeated when they went into work and they were somewhat okay. Now you done took them to an emotional high that day for the rest of the day. Typically stuff like that. Then you also got like your best friends were like or people at the bar that you hang out with quite often that you see as regulars at the bar, or bar patrons is the way they refer to. You buy them a drink, they get caught off guard by it because somebody's buying them a drink. They don't know who's buying them a drink, but you buy them a drink and they feel good about themselves. Like somebody actually cares enough to buy me a drink. That feels good. And typically, if they're kind-hearted people, or they have enough sense or enough social skills, or they're not socially awkward, they typically respond with "thank you" or "no thank you, I got to get going," or I drove and I've had a bit too much to drink. It's typically how they respond. That's typically how it goes. But the sad part about that, we live in a society with people that are so negative, or they treat people a certain way and they don't say thank you, or they're not appreciative of things that they actually do or get. So you typically end up in a rut. This is typically the syndrome that you get where when you're out in public and you hold the door for somebody and they walk through like you were supposed to be holding the door from in the first damn place. You typically get a lot of those people, and it sucks, but it's the nature of the beast. And it's like everybody's selfish. Every human being is selfish to a certain extent, to the point where they don't understand, or they're grappling with various emotions in them. So it's like they're all absorbed or wrapped up in themselves to actually enjoy the outside world, or understand what's going on around them, to be stimulated by the outside world. So they pretty much either receded into themselves, or they're oblivious to their surroundings for all intents and purposes is when this is actually going on. It's sad, but it's true. And it's like it's one of those things where like you have to understand why it's happening or why it's going on to fully grasp the full situation of it for all intents and purposes. Um, Typically, it's all about overcoming it and making yourself a better person, or not or understanding why you're in the mess you're in, or why your life is going the way it is, and why it's negative, or why you can't get what you want in life. If you got all this negative energy around you for all intents and purposes, all this negative energy around you is just going to create and make for a very negative life. So if you're a very negative person, nobody's going to want to hang with you. If you're a very negative person and you go into an interview, you're not going to get hired. If you're a very negative person and you go in and do things or try to better yourself, or you want to go for a raise or advance, or a promotion, they're typically going to look over you for the fact that you don't have the energy or the zest to actually do the job. So you're going to get looked over. The sad part about that is you gotta be able to improve yourself so you can actually better yourself in life, or climb the ladder, or as they say, climb the corporate ladder or the job ladder if you're not in corporate world. To climb that ladder, basically, you got to be able to be better, or treat people better, or have a better outlook on life, or be positive for all intents and purposes. Because the sad part about being a supervisor, it's all about team building, and it's all about be reassuring your team and the people under you that everything is going to be good, and everything is great, and I got your back, no 100%, and they have 100% faith in you for all intents and purposes. If they don't have the faith in their supervisor, they're probably going to perform very shitty. Or if their supervisor doesn't have faith in themselves, it's going to reflect on the staff, on how they act out on the floor and act out in public with the customers and stuff like that. It's going to lower their morale for all intents and purposes, if you want to call it. It'll lower their morale when their supervisor is not the greatest supervisor in the world, or don't really have the ability to corral the team, or give them a pep talk, or lift the morale or their spirits for all intents and purposes. So it's one of those things. So you have to always improve yourself, or look for something that can improve you, or do something that you enjoy in life for all intents and purposes, or be willing to help another person, or brighten another person's day. That typically makes that person feel good, which entails make you feel good as a human being. It's pretty much how it works. So, if you have that special person in your life, like special person, I mean, like, your mom, or your dad, or aunt, uncle, grandma, girl, friend, or girlfriend, or anything like that, or children, or, anybody in your life where you can actually improve their life greatly, or make them put a smile on their face, to actually give them a ripple effect so they can actually ripple out and put smiles on other people's faces because they're having a good day. It's typically like, if you run into a negative person and they're negative to you, you have a bad day for the rest of the day. If you run into a positive person and they rub off on you, it starts reverberating out in the waves. It's almost like the ripple effect, basically. It starts reverberating out, and everybody else starts feeling ground zero's emotions, from let it be negative or positive, basically. Everybody gets to feel ground zero's emotions, basically, based on the person that they came in contact. It's almost like, what they say, 6 degrees from separation type thing. Like, let's just say if I'm walking down the street and, no sweetheart's having a bad day, and I pat him on the shoulder and I help him out, and, I get him to where he needs to go. Now he's having a bit of a good day, and he happens to run into Sifu. Sifu's having a bad day. He pats Sifu on the back and buys him a coffee. Now he's having a great day, and it goes on. Then, Sifu happens to run into, Chronic Blast, and Chronic Blast is like, in a bad rut, where, like, his let's just say his dog is missing, or his he's going through a bad breakup or something like that, or something's happening to one of his friends where he's in a rut. Sifu Black Iris walks up on him, pats him on the shoulder, and tell him everything's going to be okay, and he takes him out to lunch. So it ripples into like bigger things for all intents and purposes. So a person making you feel a certain way makes that person feel a certain way, makes another person feel a certain way, and it just ripples out to a bunch of other people. Or you doing something good for a person makes you feel good, and it makes that person feel good, so they do something else for the next person. So it's one of those things where you pass it on. I think that's what they refer to it in America, pass it on. It's typically how that works. My final thoughts on it is, never ever get stuck in this rut. Always be willing to try to improve yourself, or always be willing to try to better yourself for all intents and purposes. So the sad part about that is, a lot of people actually get stuck in a rut, and they don't quite understand what's going on, and they can't really improve themselves, or they can't improve upon themselves to make it better. So never get stuck in this rut. Always be trying to push forward and improve yourself, but any way, shape, or means necessary to do so. Let it be, like I said, activities. Let it be a hobby. Let it be crafting, whittling, anything. Let it be traveling. Let it be, singing, writing music, making beats, or doing anything. Let it be playing an instrument. Let it be, you name it, dance, making somebody feel special, and just general stuff like that. Just do it to make yourself a better person. Is typically how it works at the end of the day. So if you can't do that, find a nice support network that can help you do it, or get into like various groups or activities that you're that you're somewhat interested in and you want, or you want to explore yourself, that you always had, that you always wanted to check out but you never really had the time to, or you never really thought that you could actually do it, definitely try to go check those out, or check out various activities. Let it be painting by numbers, or drink some wine while painting, or stuff along the lines of that. You can do it. I like that. That dude from Waterboy. You can do it. But yeah, you can do it. And the sad part about that is a lot of people don't think they can, and they end up in this rut, or they end up in this constant state of denial and or defeatist mentality, that, and it makes it hard for them to climb out. And if you're one of those people who know somebody in this thing, do your best to try to help that person. I'm not saying, like, drop millions and millions of dollars on them, or try to take them to Magic City on a Monday and make it rain or anything like that. Like, do something small. Flower, let it be a guy or girl. Flower, let it be a guy or a girl. Drink or a coffee or a tea, or do something that brighten that person's day. If you know something that that person likes or is into, or the person's homesick, like, make them something, or get them something with their country flag on it, or try to learn their language so they can feel like they're accepted or wanted. Like, something to make them feel wanted or loved or accepted, for all intents and purposes, is typically how it works. So it's one of those things where it's like, you have to basically always improve upon yourself, and you always have to be willing to better yourself, for all intents and purposes, for this reason. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, just do it. Just do it. Um, but yeah, what's up, JD Mouse? But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, it's one of those things where you have to basically be able to you have to be able and be willing to improve yourself, and you have to be on the path to actually improving yourself and make yourself a better person. So typically, just don't stay stagnant, and always work on your self, and make yourself better. And like I said, this is red pill knowledge that everybody should have learned when they were kids, or in life, that a lot of people don't have, or not equipped with. Some people are equipped with it and don't think, well, Tico, why are you talking about this? I already know this. But the sad part about that, do you really? Like I said, I don't just make red pill content that you want. I make red pill content that you need to hear, or need in life, for all intents and purposes. So anytime I make a video, and it may not always be for you, but you might run into somebody who needs it. Or when I make it, it might not be for you at that moment in time, but down the line, you'll remember this video and go, well, I was hating on Tico, and I called him out his name, and I said, this ain't shit, and this, that, and the other. And now I see what he's talking about. So it's one of those things where I'm trying to prepare you, not for just now, but for your future, or prepare you for getting out of the rut you're in now, and prevent you from getting into that rut in the future. And if you do get into that rut in the future, I'm trying to help you get out of that rut in the future, or give you the path or the knowledge to get out of that rut in the future, for all intents and purposes. That's all it really is. So all this stuff is needed. It's all knowledge that's needed. The sad part about that is we don't learn this growing up, because we typically get away from it, or we're too busy wrapped up in what's hot, what's popping, who got the biggest boobs, titties, ass and tits, rap songs, who got the latest greatest style, or clothes, or Jordans, or bags, or sunglasses, and shit like that. So typically we get away from all this stuff, and we forget all about this stuff. And then when we run into these problems, we don't know how to cope enough to get out of the stuff that we're in. That's pretty much my afterthoughts on that, and why people actually get stuck doing it. Because like the best people in the world get stuck doing it, and they forget all about it, because they're all high sedity and high maintenance, and they forget that where they came from, or forget the tools that they need, that actually made them the human beings that they are, because they don't believe they need them, and because they're too good to have them, for all intents and purposes, or they're too good to remember where they came from. And it's like, it's one of those things where it's like the same with Seafood Black Irish said. Are you a slave, or are you a warrior? For all intents and purposes, you're a slave to your emotions and the world around you, or you're a warrior, and you go on the path by yourself to always improve yourself, and always be looking to better yourself, for all intents and purposes. So you don't want to be that slave mentality. Massa said pick the cotton, so I gotta go pick the cotton, because Massa said we don't want to get them lashes. Massa said, or you could be the warrior and say, fuck this, I'm out. I'm breaking camp. Who's with me? So that's typically the mentalities that you have to have. That's the only two mentalities you can possibly have. Either Be the warrior or be the slave. Be a slave to your emotions and the society and how it's treating you, or be the warrior and fight off everybody and anything and choose your battles wisely and go through life, you know, free and having fun and living your life to the fullest for all intents and purposes. Um, but that's about it. Y'all have a blessed day. Be good to yourselves. Treat yourselves like milk and nut, but spoil yourselves. Always improve upon yourselves and make yourself the better version of yourself. What's up, JD Mouse? And never forget to keep an open mind. So when somebody comes to you with an argument, you could possibly use that with what they have to better your argument or to reinforce your argument that you have already, and or quite possibly to expound upon your argument, and or probably might change your stance just a tad bit to actually make your argument better. So you could be able to argue both sides if you'd ever have to. So always keep an open mind and absorb what is useful and reject what is useless, like they say, what Bruce Lee says, basically, when it comes to it. On top of that, just better yourself. Always entreat yourself, basically, all the time. Or not all the time, sometimes, for all intents and purposes. So when it comes down to it, it's one of those things where, like, you have to always be willing to improve yourself. You can't stay stagnant, and you always got to be willing to actually just go and do it and not be scared or not be taken by surprise or off guard for all intents and purposes for this line of reasoning. But as I said, y'all have a blessed day. Be good to yourselves and always improve upon yourselves and make yourself the better version of yourselves. Adios, my niggas. Outro. Outro.
You look like it. Yeah. Last night.